But you're literally, the argument you make is like, the fucking Holocaust is happening, and you are over there, okay? Like a Volkish German going, well, what about the Holocaust that's happening to the pigs in the farms? Why? Why? Why aren't we thinking about the Holocaust? Oh, this is very unacceptable. That's what you sound like when we're having a conversation about fucking human beings. That's so good. Exactly. It's like, oh my God, that's so good. Oh, I'm using that forever. Vegans are the all lives matter, folks, in this circumstance.
Hey, what is up, guys? So today we're going to be responding to another creator who I am a pretty big fan of, but of course don't really agree with on veganism. His name is Hasan Piker. He's like a left-leaning political streamer, and he recently had a video that was dropped. I'm not sure if he uploaded the video or someone else did, because there's some people that like watch his channel and then like upload footage of him. But anyway, there was a video of him reacting to somebody else who was a vegan, reacting to him, giving these sort of takes toward vegans and veganism in general that I, of course, did not agree with. So we're going to go through some of that and see just where Hasan is lacking. This video might be made into two parts just because of how long the video we're critiquing is. So let's get right into it.
What? God, vegans. Oh, God, fucking vegans, dude. I am off left as fuck when it comes to like veganism and when it comes to dealing with shit like this instead of whatever kind of idiotic. It's not off left, authoritarian left dream world that people live in where they think that like individuals will engage in consumer side activism.
So we're only 30 seconds into the video and Hasan has already said something quite weird. So Hasan has said he is off left when it comes to things like veganism. What I think he means when he says this is like he views veganism as something that is within the category of authoritarian leftism or whatever. So a couple things here. I do acknowledge that veganism tends to be adhered to by people on the left side of the political spectrum, but it isn't necessarily a left-wing movement. Veganism is apolitical in my view. Secondly, the view that veganism should be viewed as a kind of, authoritarian left position is just pretty weird to me. The word authoritarian tends to be defined as something like the principle of blind submission to authority as opposed to individual freedom of thought or action. The reason I find putting veganism in the category of authoritarian as weird is because carnism, which essentially is just non-veganism or what veganism fights against, with respect to animals, is one of the most authoritarian things on the planet. Now, I understand that Hasan probably meant like, oh, veganism is left authoritarian because veganism cares about what people eat and would want to eventually have authority over what people eat. But this is also ironic to me considering that veganism is a movement designed to remove the authoritarian relationship between humans and animals that has existed for thousands of years now, where animals are forced to abide by an authority figure, humans, so that humans can benefit from consuming and using their bodies and products. Ironically, veganism tends to be framed as this forceful thing toward other people, when in reality, veganism seeks to stop an incredibly forceful thing toward animals. We basically want to force others to not force animals to suffer and die. What is wrong with this?
With a horrible comparison, voting is still collectivized. Voting is still a form of collective action, okay?
Whereas, veganism is just a massive group of people taking individual actions in unison.
You do it in the same day. You do it in the same structure, in the same process. Making a comparison to consumer side activism that's completely disorganized with this man really unironically and uncritically is trying to make it seem like veganism is the same as voting. Why don't you go vote vegan then, bitch? Cory Booker 2020.
So in the consumer context, I mean, yeah, veganism isn't necessarily the same exact thing as voting in a political sense. But I would say that in some sense, you are voting with your dollar for certain things to happen when you pay for particular products. For example, in the case of you buying an animal product, you are technically increasing the demand of a product which by extension increases supply. And supply in this case is animals who are bred into existence to suffer and die. So when you vote for something political, you are contributing to a collective process, and you definitely have a singular effect on a collective process, but your singular effect is usually nothing like providing demand, hence supply, for something as horrific as animal agriculture. So I'm just making the point here that if we analogize political voting with your dollar when buying animal products, most of the time voting with your dollar towards something vegan rather than not vegan is going to have a much more positive impact on the world than a singular political vote.
Your advocacy is understandable as long as it's literally not comparing fucking pigs to humans. Anytime there's like systemic racism being uttered in the chat, a vegan has to chime in and be like, what about cow genocide?
So I just want to cover the distinction between comparing two things and equating two things, because whenever this topic gets brought up, I often see equating and comparing become conflated. Although Hasan just said here, vegan advocacy is understandable when vegans aren't comparing pigs to humans, at least to me it seems like he thinks that vegans who do this are equating the moral value of humans and pigs. And just to be clear, veganism does not entail viewing all sentient life as equal. One can recognize different levels of moral value between humans and non-human animals, while simultaneously understanding that both should have the right to not be bred into a horrific existence, exploited, commodified, and murdered. Now, on the topic of actually comparing, say, the oppression of pigs to the oppression of African Americans, I mean, what is the issue with simply pointing out, for example, how people oppressed African Americans for reasons similar to why people today oppress pigs? To point this out isn't to equate the moral value of the two, you're just comparing the two, hence pointing out similarities between the two. I understand that making these comparisons can, in people's own, minds, come across as equating, say, pigs and African Americans, but in reality, the person is just making a comparison and drawing similarities between the two.
This entire argument started because someone said immigrant workers that work in fucking farms, in like dairy farms, are working in an unethical field and that they don't care about those fucking undocumented immigrants. As we were watching a video about them getting yeeted out of the country. I'm sorry. Okay? I give infinitely more fucks about the undocumented immigrants than I do about the fucking cow that they're milking, all right?
You can maintain the view that undocumented immigrants are, more valuable than the cows which they are exploiting in the, process of committing to their jobs. But you can also morally condemn what cows are going through and still stay consistent with your view that undocumented immigrants matter more than cows.
But you're literally, the argument you make is like, the fucking Holocaust is happening, and you are over there, okay, like a Volkish German, going, well, what about the Holocaust that's happening to the pigs in the farms? Why? Why aren't we thinking about the Holocaust? Oh, this is very unacceptable. That's what you sound like when we're having a conversation about fucking human beings. That's so good. Exactly. It's like, oh my God, that's so good. Oh, I'm using that forever. Vegans are the all lives matter, folks, in this circumstance. Oh, all lives matter? Guess what, bitch? What about animal lives? Literally all fucking animal lives matter. Oh, I'm stealing that. Oh, that's exactly what you fucking sound like. That's exactly what you sound like. Oh, sorry, sweaty. We can't walk and chew gum at the same time. Sorry, Black Lives Matter protesters on the streets saying we should end police brutality and enforce accountability. Actually, sweaty, all lives matter, okay? And animal lives are a part of all lives. Okay, so it's a shit take, though. Okay, I'll take it back. I take it back.
So although Hasan takes back this whole analogy of all lives matter people to vegans who bring up things like the cows that are getting oppressed when someone else is talking about immigrant workers who are being oppressed who are working with cows, I still want to attack this because there are a lot of people, especially the person who, made the comment in Hasan's chat, that view vegans who do this similarly to all lives matter kinds of people who say all lives matter to Black Lives Matter. To make the analogy more clear to you guys, when people are doing like Black Lives Matter activism and other people come around and say, oh, what about all lives? They're kind of failing to track the fact that the people who are saying Black Lives Matter are aware that all lives matter, but they're just trying to bring attention to a specific population, you know, like Black people, who are not being taken seriously with respect to their, you know, rights and their lives. And even vegans deal with this kind of thing where we're talking about animal rights and other people will say things like, what about humans? So the basic concept is that, you know, a person is advocating for a specific group, and then the person hearing the person advocating ends up saying something like, what about other groups? And it's, you know, it's a very bad thing to say. It indicates that you're not really tracking that they're trying to, you know, emphasize a specific group right now and just bring attention to them because them as a singular group aren't being given enough attention. Now, on the topic of should vegans do this thing where, you know, somebody's bringing up immigrant workers in a dairy farm and they're trying to talk about the terrible conditions of the immigrant workers, like should a vegan in that situation bring up dairy cows? There might be a way to do this, but yeah, it's clear that someone like Hasan or the people that are talking about immigrant workers in those contexts are probably not going to react in a way that's optimal. They're going to probably feel like you're giving these like all lives matter vibes to them and you're not really understanding what they're trying to talk about because they're talking about immigrant workers having terrible conditions and then you bring up cows. But at the same time, it is important to understand this. Like it can be very ironic when somebody is so vehemently and passionately talking about the terrible conditions of immigrant workers when those immigrant workers are also actively oppressing these other animals who are arguably in worse conditions. So, you know, maybe you can do a thing where you entertain what they're saying about immigrant workers. And then once that conversation is over, just nicely say things like, so what do you think about the actual dairy cows that are in those environments as well, that are being oppressed, that are being separated from their children, you know, things like that. This might be a solution to this whole problem where, you know, a person is trying to talk about a specific group and then vegans end up saying like, oh, what about this group being animals. So this Hasan video is about 25 minutes long and I only got through 7 minutes and 30 seconds and this video is already this long. I don't know how long it is right now, but probably very long. For that reason, I'm probably just going to make a part 2 of this video later down the line responding to Hasan, depending on how cringe his takes are throughout the rest of this video. Thank you so much for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next video.
Dude, even vegans don't get your weird, stupid wannabe sense of irony here. Who is your audience? Nobody gets these dumb jokes. Dude, even vegans don't get your weird, stupid